The rain hammered against the windows as I stood in the middle of our living room, clutching two grocery bags that dripped water onto the worn carpet. My fingers ached from carrying them 6 blocks in the storm because Mom's car needed gas money I didn't have. She appeared in the doorway, her face already twisted into that familiar expression of disappointment. "You forgot to buy milk again?" Her voice cut through the sound of rain. "You can't even do one simple thing right, Aaron." "One thing. That's all I asked." From the couch, my younger sister Kayla laughed without looking up from her phone. She was 17, old enough to help, but she never did. Neither did Marcus, my 15-year-old brother, who sat beside her eating chips I'd bought with money from my double shift at the warehouse. I wanted to scream that milk wasn't on the list she'd texted me. I wanted to tell her I'd just worked 16 hours straight and my body felt like it might collapse. I wanted to remind her that today was my 24th birthday and nobody had said a word about it. Instead, I set the bags down carefully on the coffee table, watching water pool around them. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't make them stop. "You're the man of the house now," Mom continued, crossing her arms. "Your father would be so disappointed in how you've turned out. Stop acting like you're doing us some kind of favor by being here." That's when something inside me finally cracked. Not broke, just cracked. A hairline fracture that would eventually split everything wide open. It started 3 years ago when Dad died. Heart attack at 48, gone before the ambulance even arrived. One moment, he was laughing at something on television. The next, he was on the floor, and Mom was screaming for me to call for help. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and casseroles from neighbors who stopped coming around after a few weeks. But I remember the moment Mom turned to me in the cemetery, her mascara running down her face, and said the words that would become my prison sentence. "You're all I have left, Aaron. Promise me you won't leave me too." I was 21 then, fresh out of community college with an associate degree in graphic design and dreams of moving to the city. I had a portfolio ready, interviews lined up, and a friend who said I could crash on his couch until I found my own place. I canceled everything the day after the funeral. Mom fell apart in ways that seemed dramatic at first, then just became normal. She'd call me at work crying about nothing. She'd forget to pay bills, then blame me when the electricity got shut off. She started sleeping until noon and staying up until 3 in the morning watching home shopping channels. Meanwhile, Kayla and Marcus treated the house like a hotel. They'd leave dishes in the sink for days, track mud through the hallways, and complain when I asked them to help. Mom never said a word to them, only to me. "They're still children," she'd say, even though Kayla was old enough to work and Marcus was old enough to do his own laundry. 6 months after Dad died, I started noticing the pattern. Every time I mentioned looking for a better job or maybe taking an evening class, Mom would have a crisis. Her blood pressure would spike. She'd have panic attacks. She'd clutch her chest and talk about joining Dad in heaven. The first time it happened, I rushed her to the emergency room at 2 in the morning. The doctors found nothing wrong. They gave her anxiety medication and sent us home with a bill I'd spend the next 6 months paying off. The second time, I knew something felt off about it. She'd been fine all day, laughing on the phone with her sister, watching her shows. Then I mentioned a friend's birthday dinner I wanted to attend that weekend, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. I canceled the dinner. My friends eventually stopped inviting me places. One evening, I was clearing the table after another silent meal where I'd cooked, served, and would clean up alone. Mom was on the phone in the living room, and her voice carried through the thin walls of our house. "I don't know what I'd do without him," she said to whoever was listening. "Aaron practically pays all the bills now. He's such a good boy." But there was something in her tone that made me freeze with a plate halfway to the sink. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't love. It was satisfaction, like a person talking about a purchase that had worked out better than expected. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling when I was 10, and I realized something that made my stomach hurt. She didn't see me as her son anymore. She saw me as labor. I tried talking to her about it the next week. We were in the kitchen, and I'd just gotten home from an early morning shift. My whole body ached, but I needed to say what had been building inside me. "Mom, I feel like I'm the only one doing anything around here." I kept my voice steady, non-accusatory. Maybe Kayla and Marcus could help more. They're old enough. Her face changed instantly. The soft, sad expression she'd worn since Dad died hardened into something else. "Because they're not as strong as you, Aaron. You've always been the strong one. That's why I depend on you. But I'm tired," I said quietly. I'm so tired all the time. Everyone's tired. She turned back to the coffee maker I'd fixed 3 times already this year. You think I'm not tired? You think losing your father was easy for me? But I don't complain about it. I just get through each day the best I can. The guilt hit me like a physical thing. Here I was, complaining about working and paying bills, while my mother was still grieving. What kind of son was I? I'm sorry, I heard myself say. You're right. I shouldn't have brought it up. She smiled then, and patted my cheek. That's my good boy. I knew you'd understand. Later that night, I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed out something I'd been thinking but couldn't say aloud. Strong means silent. Silent means stuck. I stared at those words for a long time before closing the app without saving them. The opportunity came out of nowhere 6 months later. A design firm in Portland was hiring, and one of my old classmates sent me the listing. It was entry-level, but it paid twice what I was making at the warehouse. It had benefits. It had room to grow. I applied at midnight when everyone was asleep. I did the phone interview in my car during my lunch break. When they asked me to come in for a final interview, I told them I could drive up on my day off. For 2 weeks, I let myself imagine a different life. An apartment with actual space. Coworkers who talked about design instead of shipping schedules. Coffee shops and art galleries, and the kind of normal problems normal 24-year-olds had. They offered me the job on a Thursday. I'd start in 3 weeks. That night at dinner, I told Mom. I tried to make it sound good, like something we should celebrate. They're offering decent money. I could send some home every month to help out. And Portland's not that far, just a few hours if you need me to visit. Her fork clattered onto her plate. Visit? Her voice went shrill. You'd only visit? Mom, it's a really good opportunity. What about us? Kayla chimed in, suddenly interested. Who's going to drive me to practice? You're 17, I said. You can get your license. I can't believe you're being this selfish, Mom said, standing up. Her chair scraped against the floor. After everything we've been through. After everything I've sacrificed for you. I'm not trying to abandon anyone. I just need to. She clutched her chest. Her face went pale. I can't breathe. Aaron, I can't breathe. I called the ambulance because what else could I do? Kayla was crying. Marcus looked scared. Mom was on the floor, gasping, telling me she loved me, that she didn't want to die, that she was sorry for being such a burden. The paramedics arrived and checked her vital signs. Her oxygen was fine. Her heart rate was elevated but not dangerous. They asked if she wanted to go to the hospital anyway, just to be safe. In the ambulance, she held my hand and whispered, "Don't leave me, Aaron. Please. I can't do this without you." We spent 4 hours in the emergency room. The doctors ran tests. Everything came back normal. They gave her the same anxiety medication as before and told her to follow up with her regular doctor. The hospital bill arrived 2 weeks later. $1,500 after insurance. I called the design firm the next morning and told them I couldn't take the position. The woman on the phone sounded disappointed but understanding. She wished me luck and said to reach out if my situation changed. I sat in my car in the warehouse parking lot after that call and realized I'd just traded my future for my mother's performance. Because that's what it had been. I knew it in my gut, even if I couldn't prove it. That night, I made a decision. I would start looking through the house for answers. Not because I wanted to catch her in something, but because I needed to understand what was happening to me. What I found would change everything. The call came on a random Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Usually I let those go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Is this Aaron Hendricks? The voice was professional, slightly bored. Yes. This is Capital Collections calling about an outstanding debt in your name. You currently owe $4,200 on a personal loan taken out in March of last year. The account is 90 days past due. My stomach dropped. I never took out a loan. The account was opened under your social security number at Westside Credit Union. Are you saying you didn't authorize this? I sat down hard on my bed. I'm saying I have no idea what you're talking about. After the collection agency gave me the account details, I drove straight to Westside Credit Union during my lunch break. The banker pulled up my information and confirmed it. For $1,000, borrowed 18 months ago, with my signature on all the paperwork. Except I'd never been to that bank in my life. The signature looked like mine though. Close enough that I almost doubted myself. The address listed was our house. The phone number was my old cell number, the one I'd had before upgrading last year. Someone who knew all my information had taken out a loan in my name. Someone who had access to my social security card, which I kept in my desk drawer. I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I found Mom in the living room, watching her usual afternoon shows. "Did you take out a loan in my name?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. She didn't even look surprised. "We needed the money, Aaron. The mortgage was behind. You committed fraud. Don't be dramatic. We're family. Family shares everything." She said it so casually, like she was talking about borrowing a cup of sugar. Besides, I couldn't qualify on my own with my credit. You understand, don't you? I did it for all of us. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that signature on the loan paperwork. The casual way Mom had admitted to stealing my identity. The phrase, "family shares everything," echoing in my head like a threat. At 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere in the neighborhood. Mom's home office was really just the corner of the dining room where she kept her filing cabinet and an old desk Dad used to use for paying bills. I'd never gone through her things before. It felt like crossing a line. But she'd crossed a line first, hadn't she? The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew where she kept the key. Inside a ceramic frog on the windowsill, the same place she'd kept it for years. My hands were shaking as I opened the top drawer. It was full of paperwork. Bills, mostly, some paid, but most marked with red overdue stamps. Credit card statements showing balances I hadn't known about. Hospital bills from Mom's various emergency room visits. But it was the manila folder in the back that made me stop breathing. Insurance documents. Dad's life insurance policy from his job at the manufacturing plant. The one I knew had paid out after he died because Mom mentioned it once, saying it barely covered funeral costs. Except according to these papers, the policy had been for $250,000. And the beneficiary listed was me, not Mom. The payout confirmation was dated 3 months after Dad's funeral. $250,000, deposited into an account I'd never heard of. I sat on the floor of the dining room with that folder in my lap, and I finally understood. She'd been lying about everything. The money problems, the desperate need for me to work and contribute, all of it was fiction. I didn't confront her. That was the thing about finally seeing the truth. It changed how you acted. I realized that every time I'd confronted Mom about something, she'd twisted it around until I was apologizing. She was better at manipulation than I was at fighting it. So instead, I started planning. Quietly, carefully. The next day, I opened a new bank account at a different bank across town. One she didn't know about. I set up direct deposit for half my paycheck, left the other half going to my old account where it had always gone. She never looked at my pay stubs anyway. She just took money from my account when she needed it, which I'd given her access to years ago during one of her emergencies. I started freelancing on the side, using my graphic design skills to pick up small jobs online. Nothing big, just logos and website layouts for small businesses. 200 here, 300 there. Every dollar went into the new account. I stopped buying anything unnecessary. Wore the same clothes until they fell apart. Brought lunch from home instead of buying it. Canceled the streaming services I'd been paying for that everyone in the house used. Kayla complained about losing access to her shows. "Use your own money to pay for it," I said. "I don't have a job," she shot back. "Then I guess you don't get streaming services." Mom tried to guilt me about it, saying I was being petty. I just shrugged and walked away. Something about knowing the truth made their words bounce off easier. At night, I researched tenant rights and lease agreements. I looked at apartments in Portland, even though I knew I couldn't leave yet. Not until I had enough saved. Not until I had a plan that couldn't fail. My 25th birthday came exactly 1 year after the breaking point with the grocery bags and the forgotten milk. I worked another double shift because the money was too good to turn down. When I got home that evening, soaked from another rainstorm, the house was exactly the same as it had been a year ago. Kayla on the couch with her phone. Marcus eating chips in front of the television. Mom in the kitchen, cutting a cake she'd bought from the grocery store with money that had originally been mine. "There's the birthday boy," she said, not looking up from the cake. 25 years old. Where does the time go? Nobody sang. Nobody had gotten me a card. The cake said "Happy Birthday" in generic blue frosting, the kind they kept pre-made in the bakery section. I stood in the doorway and watched her cut slices. She put one on a paper plate and handed it to Kayla, who took it without saying thank you. Then one for Marcus. Then one for herself. "Aren't you having any?" she asked me, finally meeting my eyes. "I'm not hungry," I said. Something in my voice made her pause. She studied my face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Are you feeling okay? You've been acting strange lately." "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired." "You're always tired." She laughed, but it sounded uncertain. "Come on, at least have a small piece. It's your birthday." I took the plate because it was easier than arguing. I ate the cake standing up while my family sat in the living room, and I felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger. Just a calm, cold certainty that I was done. The letter came in the mail 3 days later. I recognized the handwriting immediately, even though I hadn't seen it in years. Victor Delgado, Dad's best friend from work. They'd started at the plant together, worked side by side for 15 years. After Dad died, Victor had come to the funeral and tried to talk to me. But Mom had kept everyone at a distance, saying we needed time as a family to grieve privately. I'd lost touch with most of Dad's friends after that. The letter was short. "Aaron, I heard through some mutual friends that you're still living at home. I've been thinking about your dad lately and thought you might want to grab coffee sometime. There are some things about his estate I think you should know. Call me when you get a chance." I called him from my car during lunch the next day. We met that weekend at a diner on the edge of town. Victor looked older than I remembered, his hair completely gray now, but his handshake was still firm. "You look just like him," he said, and I saw actual tears in his eyes. "Damn, kid. It's good to see you." We talked about nothing important for the first 20 minutes. Work, weather, how the plant had changed since Dad passed. Then Victor leaned forward and lowered his voice. "Your dad and I used to talk a lot. About life, about family, about what mattered. A few months before he died, he told me he'd updated his insurance policy. Made you the beneficiary instead of your mom." My throat went tight. "Why would he do that?" "He wanted to make sure you had a safety net. Said you were the responsible one, the one who'd do something meaningful with it. He was proud of you, Aaron. Talked about you constantly." Victor pulled out a folder from the bag he'd brought. Inside were photocopies of documents. The insurance policy showing me as beneficiary. Dad's will, which specifically stated the insurance money was meant to help me start my career and my life. "Your father wanted you to be free," Victor said quietly. "Not their keeper. He used to worry that your mom leaned on you too much even when he was alive. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd make sure you knew what he wanted for you." I stared at the papers, my vision blurring. "She's been using the money. The whole time. She told me it barely covered the funeral." Victor's jaw tightened. "That's what I was afraid of. Your dad set that policy up specifically so you could chase your dreams. He talked about you maybe opening your own design studio someday. That was his hope for you." We sat in silence for a moment. The diner buzzed with afternoon conversations around us, but I felt like I was underwater, everything distant and muffled. "What do I do?" I finally asked. "That's up to you, kid. But I'll tell you what your dad would say. He'd tell you that loyalty to family doesn't mean letting them destroy you. He'd tell you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away." I drove home with those photocopies in my glove compartment. That night, I pulled them out and read through every page. Dad's signature at the bottom of the will. The clause that said the insurance money was for Aaron's future and independence. She'd stolen more than money from me. She'd stolen my father's last gift. His final act of love. That's when I stopped playing defense and started playing offense. I started acting different the next week. Not dramatically, just small changes that added up. I called in sick to work, which I never did. I stayed in bed later than usual. I stopped doing the dishes right away, letting them pile up in the sink. When Mom asked what was wrong, I just said I was tired. Burned out. Couldn't seem to get motivated anymore. "You need to snap out of this," she said on the third day. "We have bills to pay." "I know," I said flatly. "I just can't seem to care right now." By the end of the week, the house was falling apart. Trash overflowing, laundry piling up, nothing in the refrigerator because I hadn't gone shopping. Kayla and Marcus started complaining to Mom instead of to me. "Why isn't Aaron doing anything?" Kayla whined. "There's no food in the house." "I don't know." Mom snapped at her. "Why don't you go to the store yourself?" "With what money?" "Figure it out. I'm not your maid." I listened to this argument from my bedroom and felt something like satisfaction. They were finally turning on each other instead of just depending on me to hold everything together. On Saturday, I finally got up and cleaned the kitchen. But I did it slowly, methodically, like someone going through motions they no longer believed in. Mom watched me from the doorway. "Are you feeling better?" she asked. "Not really," I said. "But things need to get done, I guess." Aaron, I'm worried about you. Maybe you should see a doctor. Get some medication for depression or something. The irony was almost funny. She'd faked medical emergencies to control me, and now she was suggesting I actually get treatment for problems she'd helped create. Maybe, I said. We'll see. 2 weeks later, Mom came home with news that made my skin crawl. She'd met someone. His name was Terry, and he was charming, she said. Funny. Good-looking for his age. They'd met at the grocery store, of all places. I think your father would want me to be happy again, she said, her eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen since before Dad died. It's been 3 years. That's long enough to grieve, don't you think? Terry started coming around for dinner. He was 46, worked in sales, drove a nice car, and wore cologne that was too strong. He complimented Mom constantly, called her beautiful, told stories that made her laugh. But when she wasn't looking, I caught him studying the house. His eyes would linger on the television, the furniture, the family photos on the wall, like he was taking inventory. One evening, I came home early from work and found him going through the mail on the kitchen counter. He jumped when he saw me, then laughed it off. Sorry, habit from work. I sort through paperwork all day. Didn't mean to snoop. No problem, I said, even though warning bells were ringing in my head. That night, I heard them talking in Mom's room. Their voices were low, but sound carried in our old house. When are you kicking that deadweight son out? Terry's voice was casual, like he was asking about dinner plans. I can't just kick him out. He pays most of the bills. Exactly. He's a grown man living at home. It's pathetic. Once we move in together, he needs to go. I'm not supporting someone else's adult kid. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. The credit alert on my phone pinged at 2 in the morning. Someone had checked my credit score. I logged into my monitoring app and saw a new inquiry from an auto lender. The next morning, I called the lender. They confirmed that someone had applied for a car loan using my information as a cosigner. The application had been submitted online the day before. Did it get approved? I asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, sir. The vehicle will be ready for pickup this Friday. I hung up and sat in my car, breathing through the rage that threatened to choke me. She'd done it again. Used my credit, my name, my future as collateral for whatever she wanted. That evening, Terry's new car was parked in our driveway. A silver sedan, still had the dealer tags on it. He and Mom were in the kitchen celebrating with wine when I walked in. Look at Terry's new car. Mom said, slightly drunk. Isn't it beautiful? Congratulations, I said evenly. I got a call from the lender today. Apparently I co-signed for it. Mom's smile faltered. Oh, Aaron, I was going to tell you. We needed someone with good credit, and you weren't using yours for anything anyway. You wouldn't have that credit if it weren't for me, Terry added, like he was doing me a favor by pointing it out. Your mom raised you, gave you a place to live. The least you can do is help her out when she needs it. I looked at my mother. Really looked at her. The woman who'd given birth to me, who I'd sacrificed everything for, who'd promised me again and again that things would get better if I just held on a little longer. And I smiled. Not a happy smile. A dangerous one. The smile of someone who'd finally stopped playing by rules that were rigged against them. You're absolutely right, I said. Family shares everything. I'd been careful with my escape planning. Meticulous. Everything in my new secret bank account. Untouched and growing slowly. My freelance earnings deposited under a business name that didn't include my real name. A new apartment lease signed for a place 2 towns over, starting in 6 weeks. But I'd made one mistake. I'd kept all the documentation in a folder on my laptop, password protected but not encrypted. And somehow, Mom had gotten into it. I realized this when Terry casually mentioned my savings during an argument about me not contributing enough to household expenses. You've got money stashed away, he said. Your mom told me. So stop pretending you're broke. Mom's face went pale. Terry had just revealed something she'd planned to keep quiet. You went through my laptop? I asked her, my voice deadly calm. I'm your mother. I have a right to know what you're planning. You were going to sneak off and leave us with nothing. You have $250,000 of my money, I said. I'd hardly call that nothing. Terry looked between us, confused. What money? None of your business, Mom snapped at him. But I was done protecting her secrets. My dad's life insurance. $250,000 that was supposed to be mine. She's been living off it for 3 years while making me pay all the bills and telling me we were broke. Terry's expression changed. I saw the exact moment he recalculated everything. The moment he realized Mom had been playing him too. That night, I changed all my passwords. I moved my important documents to a safe deposit box at my new bank. And I started watching, waiting for the inevitable explosion. It came 2 weeks later. I was in my room when I heard shouting downstairs. Terry's voice, angry and loud. Mom's voice, defensive and getting higher with each word. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. "You told me you were barely scraping by," Terry yelled. "You said you needed my help to keep the house. And all this time you've been sitting on $250,000. It's not like that. The money was for emergencies. I had to make it last. You've been scamming me the same way you scammed your son. How much of my money have you spent? How many bills did I pay that you could have covered yourself? Get out," Mom said, her voice shaking. "Get out of my house. Gladly. Have fun drowning in your lies." I heard the front door slam. From my window, I watched Terry get into the car I'd unknowingly co-signed for and drive away. When I came downstairs, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, crying. Real tears this time, not the performance tears I'd seen so many times before. "He left me," she sobbed. "Just like that. Over money. Maybe he left because you lied to him," I said. "Maybe he left because he figured out you'd do to him what you did to me." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "What's happened to you, Aaron? You used to be such a good son. So caring. Now you're cruel." "I learned from the best," I said, and walked away while she cried harder. 3 days later, Terry disappeared completely. His phone was disconnected. The apartment he'd mentioned living in turned out to be a short-term rental that he'd already vacated. And according to Mom's bank statement, which I saw lying on the kitchen counter, he'd cleaned out the joint checking account they'd opened together. $9,000 gone. Mom was hysterical. She called the police, but they said it was a civil matter. She tried calling his work, but the number he'd given her was fake. Terry, it turned out, had been a con artist. And he'd chosen the wrong mark, someone who'd spent years perfecting her own cons. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Mom spent 3 days in bed, refusing to eat, claiming she wanted to die. Kayla and Marcus were actually worried this time. They kept asking me what we should do. "She's strong," I told them, using her own words against her. "She'll figure it out." On the 4th day, she emerged from her room looking pale and hollow. "I need your help," she said to me. "I need to report the car stolen. You co-signed, so you have to come with me to the police station." "You mean the car Terry bought with my credit that you signed me up for without my permission?" I asked. "That car. Please, Aaron. I'm begging you." I looked at my mother, this woman who'd manipulated me for 3 years, who'd stolen my inheritance and my identity, who'd turned me into her personal ATM machine. And I felt nothing but tired. "Figure it out yourself," I said. "You're good at that." The collection calls started coming daily. The car loan was defaulting because Terry had stopped making payments and disappeared. The credit card bills Mom had been covering with Terry's stolen money were now overdue. The mortgage payment she'd missed because she'd put her money into a joint account Terry had emptied. For the first time since Dad died, Mom had to face real consequences. And she didn't know how to handle it. She tried calling me at work, but I'd blocked her number. She tried cornering me at home, but I'd started staying out late, sleeping in my car some nights to avoid her. She tried using Kayla and Marcus as messengers, but I told them flatly that I wasn't getting involved. One evening, my sister showed up at the coffee shop where I was working on a freelance project. She slid into the booth across from me, looking older than her 18 years. "You need to come home," Kayla said. "Mom's falling apart. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. The bank called about foreclosure." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "Because you're her son. Because we're family." "Family." I finally met her eyes. "Did you know Mom stole $250,000 from me? Money that was supposed to be mine from Dad's life insurance." Kayla's face went blank with shock. "What? Did you know she's been taking out loans and credit cards in my name for the past 3 years? That I'm $30,000 in debt from things I never bought?" "That can't be true." "It's all true." I pulled out my phone and showed her the documentation I'd compiled. Bank statements, credit reports, the insurance policy with my name as beneficiary. She's been lying to all of us. But she's been using me to pay for those lies. My sister sat there reading through everything, her face getting paler with each screen. Finally, she looked up at me. "Why didn't you tell us?" Her voice cracked. "Would you have listened?" That night, Kayla confronted Mom. I heard about it later from Marcus, who recorded part of it on his phone. My sister, who'd spent 3 years acting like I was her personal servant, had finally found her spine. Is it true about Aaron's insurance money? Kayla demanded. Did you steal from him? I didn't steal anything. That money was for the family. The beneficiary was Aaron, not you. That money was his. Mom tried her usual tactics. Tears, guilt, playing the victim. But Kayla had seen the proof. You couldn't manipulate someone who finally knew the truth. Marcus joined in, asking about the loans, the credit cards, the bills I'd been paying while Mom claimed we were broke. Their questions came faster than Mom could deflect them. Finally, she screamed, I did it all for you. Everything I've done has been to keep this family together. You're all so ungrateful. You did it for yourself, Kayla said quietly. And you destroyed Aaron in the process. When I got home that night, past midnight, the house was dark except for one light in the living room. All three of them were waiting for me. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in one day. Tell us what you need, Marcus said. To fix this, whatever you need, will help. I looked at my little brother, who'd spent 3 years doing nothing but eating the food I bought and using the electricity I paid for. At Kayla, who'd laughed when Mom insulted me. At Mom, who'd built her entire existence on my sacrifice. I don't need anything from any of you, I said. Not anymore. I packed one duffel bag on a Saturday morning. Clothes, laptop, important documents, the few things that actually mattered to me. Everything else, the furniture in my room, the books, the old posters, I left behind. Mom appeared in my doorway as I was zipping the bag closed. You're really leaving? Yes. Aaron, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. As a family, I promise things will be different. You've promised that before. I lifted the bag onto my shoulder. Every time I tried to leave. Every time I tried to have my own life. You promised things would change, and they never did. She started crying. Not the fake tears, but real, ugly sobbing. She reached for me, and I stepped back. I'm your mother, she said. You can't just abandon me. After everything I've done for you. You mean after everything you've done to me? I kept my voice steady. There's a difference. She fell to her knees, literally collapsed in my doorway, grabbing at my legs. Please, Aaron. Please don't do this. I'll die without you. I'll lose the house. I'll lose everything. For 3 years, that exact scene would have stopped me. The image of my mother on her knees, begging, would have shattered my resolve and sent me right back into the cage I'd been living in. But I'd learned something important in the past few months. Real love doesn't require you to destroy yourself to prove it. Real love doesn't manipulate or steal or lie. Real love wants you to be free, even if that freedom means leaving. You'll figure it out, I said gently, prying her hands away. You're stronger than you pretend to be. I walked past her, down the stairs, past Kayla and Marcus who stood watching from the living room. Nobody tried to stop me. They just watched as I opened the front door and stepped out into the morning sunlight. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and I felt something lift from my shoulders. Something heavy that I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. The apartment I'd rented was small but mine. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, a bathroom with a shower that worked perfectly. I spent the first night sitting on the floor, eating takeout from containers, and feeling more at peace than I had in years. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived at my new address. Mom's handwriting on the front, but thicker than usual. Inside was a letter, handwritten on lined paper. Aaron, it began. I've spent every day since you left trying to understand how things went so wrong. I've been angry at you, at your father for dying, at myself for the choices I made. But mostly I've been scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of admitting what I'd become. Your sister showed me everything. The insurance documents, the credit reports, all of it. Seeing it laid out like that, I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't tell myself I was just trying to keep the family together. The truth is, I was trying to keep you trapped. After your father died, I felt like I was drowning. But instead of learning to swim, I pulled you under with me. I told myself it was grief, that I was just surviving. But grief doesn't excuse what I did. Survival doesn't justify stealing from your own child. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to come back. I just need you to know that I see it now. I see what I took from you. 3 years of your life. Your father's gift. Your chance to build something of your own. I didn't walk away to punish you. I walked away because I finally learned what love isn't. That was the last line, and my hands were shaking as I read it. Those were my words. Words I'd thought 100 times, but never said out loud. Somehow, She'd finally heard them anyway. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't respond either. Some things needed space before they could heal, if they ever healed at all. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were mine. I picked up more freelance work, building a portfolio that actually reflected what I could do. I started sleeping through the night without waking up to anxiety about what crisis would happen next. The credit repair took longer. $30,000 in fraudulent debt didn't disappear overnight. But I filed police reports, worked with a lawyer, and slowly started rebuilding what had been destroyed. The insurance money was harder. Mom had spent most of it, and what remained was tied up in legal complications. Through mutual friends, I heard about what happened to the family I'd left behind. Mom had to get a job at a call center, working full-time for the first time in years. Kayla got her driver's license and started working part-time at a retail store. Marcus took over household chores and learned to cook basic meals. The house didn't foreclose, but it came close. They downsized, sold things, learned to budget. They learned to function without me holding everything together. Part of me felt guilty about that. The part that had been trained for 3 years to believe their survival was my responsibility. But a larger part understood that I'd done them a favor by leaving. They'd never learned to stand on their own because I'd never let them fall. One afternoon, my phone rang with Kayla's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "I'm not calling to ask you to come back," she said immediately. "I just wanted you to know that we're okay. Mom's actually working. Marcus is doing better in school. I'm saving money for community college." "That's good," I said carefully. "It's been hard. Really hard. But I think we needed it to be hard." She paused. "I'm sorry, Aaron. For how I treated you. For not seeing what was happening. I appreciate that." "Are you happy?" she asked. "Like, really happy?" I looked around my small apartment. At the desk where I worked on designs that excited me. At the calendar where I'd marked a weekend trip to Portland, just to see the city I'd once dreamed of moving to. At the life I was slowly building from scratch. "I'm getting there," I said. "Yeah, I think I am." 6 months after I left, I graduated from an online program I'd enrolled in. Bachelor's degree in graphic design, completed at night while working during the day. It wasn't the traditional college experience, but it was mine and I'd earned every credit. Nobody from my family came to the virtual graduation ceremony. I hadn't invited them. Instead, Victor Delgado was there, watching through the video stream, sending me a text afterward that said, "Your dad would be so proud." That made me cry in a way I hadn't expected. Good tears, the kind that came from grief and joy mixed together. The design firm that had offered me a job 3 years ago had an opening. I sent them my updated portfolio, not expecting anything. They called me back within a week. "We remember you," the hiring manager said. "You turned us down for family reasons. We respect that. But your work has gotten even better since then. When can you start?" I gave my notice at the warehouse that afternoon. My supervisor, who I'd worked with for years, shook my hand. "You're too smart for this place anyway," he said. "Go do something that matters." 2 weeks later, I was driving to Portland with everything I owned packed into my car. The city looked exactly like I'd imagined. Rain-soaked streets, coffee shops on every corner, the kind of creative energy that made my fingers itch to design something new. My new apartment was twice the size of my old one. The job paid enough that I could save money and pay down debt at the same time. I made friends at work, went to happy hours, did normal 25-year-old things. Sometimes I'd catch myself feeling guilty about being happy, like I didn't deserve it after leaving my family behind. But then I'd remember what Victor told me, what Dad wanted for me. Freedom wasn't selfish. It was necessary. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place almost exactly 1 year after I'd left. My lawyer called with news about the insurance money. After months of legal work, we'd recovered most of it. $180,000 transferred into my account in one stunning deposit. But there was something else. Something my lawyer had discovered while going through the court documents. Mom had been investigated for fraud 5 years before she married Dad. She'd stolen from a previous employer, using a scheme similar to what she'd done to me. The charges had been dropped after she paid restitution, but the pattern had been there all along. Dad probably never knew. He'd met her after that, fallen in love with her best version, never seeing the truth underneath. That's when I understood the real secret. Mom hadn't become a manipulator because Dad died and she was desperate. She'd always been one. Dad's death had just given her a convenient excuse and a vulnerable target. I used part of the insurance money to pay off all the fraudulent debt. Another part went into a savings account, building the safety net Dad had wanted me to have. The rest I invested in starting my own small design studio. Not something huge, just a side business where I could take on projects I cared about. Nonprofits, small businesses, people who needed good design but couldn't afford agency prices. The kind of work that felt meaningful. On the anniversary of the day I left, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Mom's friend Nancy. I wanted you to know she's doing better. She's in therapy, actually dealing with her issues. She asks about you sometimes, but won't contact you directly. She says you deserve your peace." I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to reach out, to see if reconciliation was possible. But another part, the part that had learned what healthy boundaries looked like, knew it was too soon. Maybe it would always be too soon. Instead, I typed back, "Thank you for telling me. I hope she continues healing." That night, I sat at my desk in my Portland apartment and wrote out the story I'd been living. Not for anyone else, just for myself. A way to process everything that had happened, everything I'd survived. I wrote about the rain-soaked evening with the grocery bags. About Mom's fake emergencies and real manipulation. About Terry the con artist and the insurance money that should have set me free years earlier. About Kayla and Marcus finally learning to stand on their own. But mostly I wrote about the moment I'd finally walked away. The moment I'd chosen myself over the family that had been slowly destroying me. At the end, I wrote something that felt true in a way few things did. Sometimes walking away isn't revenge. It's not even about punishment or teaching someone a lesson. Sometimes walking away is just the moment you finally choose to save yourself. And that choice, that single decision to put your own survival first, is the most powerful thing you can do. The secret they never saw coming wasn't that I'd leave. It was that I'd survive. That I'd build something better than what they destroyed. That I'd find out who I was supposed to be all along, underneath the weight of their expectations and manipulation. Freedom tastes like rain-soaked streets in a city where nobody knows your history. It tastes like work you choose instead of work you endure. It tastes like mornings where you wake up and remember you don't owe anyone your suffering anymore. My name is Aaron Hendricks. I was 21 when my father died, and my mother turned me into her lifeline. I was 25 when I finally let go of the rope and discovered I could swim on my own. This is my story. And for the first time in years, I get to write what comes next. I saved the document and closed my laptop. Through the window, Portland glowed with evening lights. Somewhere out there, other people were fighting their own battles with family, obligation, and the weight of expectations they never asked to carry. I hope they'd find their way out too. I hope they'd learn what I'd learned. That you can love people and still leave them. That you can honor your family by honoring yourself first. That sometimes the most radical act of love is setting yourself free. The rain started falling again, tapping against the window like a gentle reminder of where I'd been and how far I'd come. I turned off the lights and went to bed in my apartment that was mine, in a city I'd chosen, living a life I was finally building from scratch. And I slept better than I had in years. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below about a time you had to choose yourself over family expectations. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories every week. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see the world.